You welcome distinguished guests and participants. Today we are doing this event in the premises of Ankara Social Sciences University of Nicosia. And
Cameron is building his presentation.
Yes, we thank the President of Republic of Northern Cyprus and the rector of the university and other ambassadors to attend this meeting. We thank all of them, and we thank for the participants. The event is actually done ongoing in the premises of the university in Nicosia, as I mentioned, and also it's on the online platform with a hybrid implementation. This corona issue is bringing us this energy problem, and on the other side, this online sessions, online meetings in our life. So this makes easy to connect people from other countries and other geographies. Today's our fourth session is based on the Eastmed and also it's related with the energy markets. I just want to introduce our speakers. Mr. Peter Nigel Cameron is founder and managing director of Energy Markets Global. It's a UK-based consultancy company, and he's also a lecturer in the business strategy of the Middlesex University on oil and gas MBA. Mr. Cameron advises governments, and his well-known studies has been done in the British Gas, which is now Shell. And he's the corporate planner of the British Gas, and he's now consulting to the international other governments on the energy issues. And Mr. Michelangelo Celozzi is his very long CV. I am summarizing the CVs. Excuse me, all, to save from the time. He is the president of Transmed Engineering Limited and Center for Mediterranean Integration. He is a member of the scientific committee and lecturer in the High Defense Studies, co-founding member and the Secretary General of the Mediterranean Academy of Energy, chairman and director of the FCI Engineering Limited Company, and Met TSO, General Secretary. He is the co-founder and the first secretary of the Mediterranean Transmission System Operators Organization. He has several projects in different countries and many experience in the field. Mr. Matorozzi is Snam representative. He is the head of UK, UAE, and Egypt asset management, and he is very deep participant in the energy sector, both on the LNG side and the trade of the hydrocarbons. Now I give the floor to Mr. Celozzi. He is as the Mediterranean Transmission System Operators General Secretary. He has very well studies in the countries, neighboring countries of the Mediterranean and the market establishment. He is very well known on the energy is a peace bringing instead of peace breaking issues. So the floor is yours, Mr. Celozzi.
Thank you very much. Can I see my... that's all right. We are, then to go on. Voila. Voila. Next slide. Thank you. This is a map of the electricity grid in the Mediterranean. is quite the same of the gas map of gas infrastructure in the Mediterranean, and it is only to share a common vision of the situation. You can see the my sign. Yes, can you see?
No, we can't see the sign.
Puntatore, the point of. Okay. Okay. Anyway, in the upper side of the map, there is the European grid, and in the outside there is the southern grid. You can note the difference in the mesh of the grid. The mesh of the grid is means a lot of things. The first is the capacity of transport system. More meshed is the grid, higher is the capacity transport. Then we are in a moment in which the transition toward the new development model and the new energy systems. In this transition phase, we expected the double of the energy consumption, electricity consumption in particular. If we want to promote the energy sources, we need to promote the electricity grid, because the renewable energy sources means generation of electricity. The second note is gas is the complement, is the role to support the managing of the intermittency of the renewable energy sources. This is the situation to imagine how time, which is the times in which we have to start investment in energy infrastructure. We have a very short time. Oh, voilà. No. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. This is our problem. In the Mediterranean, there are a lot of crisis areas. You can see in Libya, in Syria, in Mali, in part of the Palestinian, there are a lot of crisis areas. This means difficult to funding investments in infrastructures. Then stability and security are the first condition for investment, and for investment in infrastructure. The investment in infrastructure are the driver of each development plan in the Mediterranean and in all the countries. Then we can go on, please. The world has changed during the last 3 years, and during the last year in particular. That means that the energy trilemma which the economists use for describe the priority of the goals in the energy sector has changed. The classical energy trilemma is in the corner the security, the sustainability, and the equity and affordability. The priorities are in phase of change. Until last year, sustainability was the first priority. today, the first priority is energy security. Is not in contrast with the sustainability, because the renewable energy sources development is a long-term objective, even for sustainability of our development plan. But the priority in this moment is supporting the energy security and energy access and affordability. The current energy crisis has underlined this problem. Then, in this problem, in this context, which will be the priorities and the objective, we can try to build a common vision in order to go on together toward a new energy and electricity systems. We have the 3-time horizon we have to consider for energy security. Yes, next step, please. The first one is the short-term planning strategy. This is very urgent because 2030 is tomorrow for all of us. Please remember that to build a power lines or a pipeline, it takes more or less 10 years. Then 2030 for all of us is tomorrow. The first objective is the grid development, gas and electricity, to sustain the electricity consumption raising. The first one is how to manage the electricity demand and how to manage the growing of electricity demand. The third objective is very important for all the Mediterranean countries, because it is a pillar of the Mediterranean blue economy, which is part of a European Green Deal, which I think we can share. But the problem is that the Green Deal is not a program, is not a plan, is an approach. And in each country, we have to define how to apply this approach toward a greener energy sector. Then, in case of the transport, in the transport sector, we have high consumption and low penetration of renewable energy sources. Then there are a lot of margin to develop a new energy sector through a new the transformation of the transport sector for goods and passenger. There are the two different approach, the mid and long haul ship, the long haul. This means shift toward from road to rail and from ship to rail and the intermodality between the different supply chain of transport services. This is the blue economy. It's very important for all of us because the Mediterranean is our life, and then the blue economy means even a lot of infrastructure to reorganize, to rebuild, to upgrading. The second one is the digitalization. The second priority for short haul is the digitalization of processes. in the industrial and tertiary sector. This means to change how to work, to change how to manage our activities. And this means to support the penetration of renewable energy sources throughout electricity development demand. The energy mix in next common future is very clear. We need renewable energy sources. Gas is the reference energy mix in the Mediterranean for managing rest intermittency. And the last point is the distributed solar generation. Very interesting for the structure of our economies, based on the small medium enterprise, for valorizing a local workforce and the social acceptability of the generation power plant. The last priority is the risk reduction. In this period of uncertainty, we have to use mature technologies, proved technologies, for generation and storage of electricity. Next step, please. In the midterm 2014, we can pose the goal of development of new infrastructures. The first one is the exploiting of hydroelectricity for pumping station, because this is the more efficient storage of electricity, and the opportunities offered by hydrogen, which is, as you know, is not an energy source, but is as storage technology. Very difficult to manage, but very promising in the future. The third priority is diversifying gas supply chains. That's clear that we cannot change the gas supply chains in some months or some year. It takes a lot of time to redesign the map of the gas supply chains. And the interconnection for gas and electricity grids is the key of the flexibility, and flexibility is the first priority for security. The flexibility of the energy system means the capacity to face the problem and the emergency conditions. I don't have trust in the resilience. Resilience is the ability of a material to obtain the initial shape before and after a deformation. Is a coming back after a problem. I try to come back to the previous state. Is not a reaction. A system have to be able to react to the perturbation. And anyway, we have to find system approach and for the system solution. Next, please. As example, I'm glad to present the very recent. There is a little mistake because this project has been presented the day after yesterday. Then is very recent, and there is some little mistake. Then it is It is a part of the development plan of Terna, and this project is named Hypergrid. For 14 gigawatt of capacity, not 20, but is 11 billion euros of budget. This is a multi-level technology approach, is an example what we can do in order to respect the priorities, considering the state of the art of the situation of the grids in of which which are in. Then, in this case, the multi-level approach concerns innovation. New inverter VSC converter, the revamping of existing alternative current power lines, shift from AC to DC current, the updating of alternate current power lines, for example, the so-called 5-phase power lines. The difficulty of facing the difficulty of AC-DC integration systems, because it's not easy to manage the integration of this kind of these technologies through overhead, underground, and submarine power lines integration. There will be occasion for discuss this approach, which is the most updating in Europe, but I think also in the world in this moment. This is the framework on which we could discuss, but my congratulations for another aspect that is the first step. Next slide, please. To overcome the energy crisis, the first step is to promote free format and occasion for technical dialogue, paving the way for a broad and multilateral Mediterranean cooperation. Cooperation is among companies, is among states, but is not possible without this precondition, which is the dialogue. Dialogue to be efficient must to be free and large, and discuss all the options available for overcoming the current energy crisis. Then, thank you very much for this invitation, because it is an occasion for discussing these issues. Thank you.
We thank you very much, Mr. Celozzi, for your brief information on the grid innovations, which is very newly announced on the power system, and your efforts on in the past was trying to bring us the energy equity and energy security together, which you have demonstrated in your presentation. So all we are thinking on the issue that how this energy crisis cannot be in the agenda of ours by trying to establish cooperation mechanisms. For these mechanisms, the energy equity, the context of the energy equity is also containing the affordability, together with for the energy affordability, both the government side, both the resource side and the end user side, all are affected from these cooperations in the positive way. So we are looking for energy to become a peaceful use in the region, and also it is bringing some economical benefits to the people living in the region. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Matarozi, the SNAM head of SNAM, who is in charge of business issues. So, Mr. Matarazzi, I give the floor to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ali. It's been a pleasure to be
We,
here.
we welcome you to be with us in this positive agenda of ours.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for not being there physically because sadly there was not a right connection that allowed me to be tonight in Brussels, flying from Cyprus. Otherwise, I would be happy to be there in person. So I think that I would like to thanks for this opportunity, and I'm really happy to consider to speak in front of this distinguished panel and distinguished platea. So, give you some insight on who I am, Giacomo Materazzo. I'm responsible of the asset of SNAM in Egypt, Israel, UAE, and UK, and I'm managing all the commercial and technical coordination of all the asset of SNAM outside of Italy. So I think that before to enter in the pitch, I would like to give you some. Can I have the slide on screen? Could I have? Thank you. I would like to give you some few indication of who is Nama to give you the indication because I don't know if is well known to everybody, and so if you can flip to the following now, you can see that SNAM is a company with about an enterprise value of 28 billion and for of regulated asset base of 23 billion and market cap about 15 over a billion of net profit in the 2020. But for people that are not familiar with number and are more familiar with the essence of what is a transportation company, we are the largest transportation company of natural gas in Europe and one of the largest in the world. We have that we own 41,700 kilometer of high pressure pipeline, means only transportation. We don't include distribution. So we have 20 BCM of capacity of storage. To give you a size, is 1/3 more or less of the entire market of Egypt, or 2 times the market of Israel today, more or less. We have regasification capacity of 20 BCM, and we enter into detail what we are doing to bring it to 30 in the next 2 years, and we will look at that. So as you can see, we are a company that it's predominantly Italian, but has been growing a lot in at European level, also abroad the European level. So if I can, the next slide. We are working in the last 10 years in this process. So SNAM is trying to position itself abroad the border of Italian peninsula to be a European player. But what is more interesting is what we have done from 2018. So since 2018, we decided the Mediterranean it's our, we could say also that in the past we did tap, but since 2018, we decided the Mediterranean is our kernel. So it's the area where SNAM could grow and could make the difference in this market. So we acquired the DESFA, that is the 36% of DESFA, that is the Greek TSO. After that, we have made a round in Abu Dhabi, but after that, we come back to the Mediterranean with acquiring the EMG, that is Mediterranean gas pipeline connecting Israel to Egypt, where we invest 25%, about 50 million. And the last that we purchased is 49% of the Sea Corridor, that is the owner of the pipeline TTPC and TMPC that are connecting Algeria with Italy. So in this moment, I would say outside of Green Stream, we are owning all the major, we are part of all the major corridors that are crossing Mediterranean to deliver energy in the at least East Mediterranean to deliver energy to Europe. And from I would say from this preferential role, I think that we can say that the SNAM it's a quite unique player in the panorama of the region, and I would like to enter and drive you a little bit through what it's our view on the market and what's going on, and what we consider that could be a boost of the future of the gas market. Because we have to admit, first of all, that we are in the age of gas. Never as before, the gas has been central for the development of the economy, central for the stability of countries, and in the center of geopolitics. So after the age of oil that started in the 80s, now we can strongly say that we are in the age of gas. But at the same time, we have to think that we are in this age, and clearly we have to understand what are the factors that would allow to this age to last and give prosperity, and not to end in a few to be a meteora. So, if you can turn the page, I would like to give you some brief of what has been my view on European market in 2022. So, 2022 has been 1 year where, on one side, as I was telling, we can recognize that gas take the lead in terms of commodity in the worldwide. This it's how can I say this? When you have that the gas reserves are growing 2 times more than oil reserves, means that the future is going in the direction of gas, and also with this with the path that is increasing a lot. So we have that. People are not investing so much in oil, and the gas is considered the commodity that have to lead the future of the transition. At the same time, we have that never as before, we have a capacity of liquefaction that reach 450 mtpa. That is almost 100 more what was in the end of the last decade. So it's been a big jump in the last 3 years. And in Europe, we have the storage reached the 95% of filling in the October 2022. So just before of this winter, that is at the end, we reached the maximum historical level of the storage pushed by European community that asked us to reach this level. And considering the difficulty to fill in the storage, this one I think has been the largest signal of the capacity of the gas market to be to react to shock like that one that have been seen this year. Because on the other side, we have to admit that 2022 has been also a period where many of the certainty that we are having in the gas market, so that the things that we will consider cast in stone, we had to consider, we have the market put in trouble our certainty, and we have to review our position. First of all, I would not hide that, but it's the Russian position. So we lose 55% of the flows on yearly basis. So considering the last 12 months, you can see in the graph, it's a rolling average. So the actual level is even lower. But looking at the rolling average, we lose 55% of the Russian supply to Europe. It means that we had to recover this flow with LNG and with Azeri gas, but at the same time we have to admit that we had also a contraction of the total import of gas more or less by 3%. That is a big signal of how weak is also the market. So in 1 year, we lose 3% of our market. It's a big risk when we would like to continue to consider the gas a stable and sustainable source for the future. At the same time, one of the other certainty that normally we had, at least in Europe, was that summer price was lower of the winter. This year we had that the summer price reached 300 euro megawatt hour. That is a record value. That is more or less 5 times what has been this winter. So when you couple this with the feeling of the storage, you can understand how deep has been the investment of the government and the company in the market to sustain the gas industry in this difficult situation. This, and I don't think that we can replicate this mechanism many times in the future. At the same time, this year we had that the European Community approved the Repower EU. Repower EU has an availability of $300 billion euro, and over that 190 billion are dedicated to renewable energy. gas infrastructure and fossil fuel infrastructure, but I consider that when I say fossil, I don't expect that when no one is financing oil infrastructure today, but the natural gas infrastructure are they have only 10 billion dedicated to that. So we have to say that these three factors put on trouble many of the positive view on the gas market that we see on the initial part of the slide. In this environment, however, to come back to the role of SNAM, we manage more or less 16% of the total import of European community through our infrastructure. But now I would like to, being the conference in Cyprus, I would like to concentrate more on what's going on in the East Mediterranean area. And if you can flip the slide, please. In the East Mediterranean area, in another way, we have a very positive, and there is no doubt that there are no shadow; it's only lights. We see that all along the value chain, we have a positive message. The discovery of Athena, Kronos, and Argis demonstrate that outside of the big giant as Zora and Leviathan, we continue to have discoveries in the region, and the company are continue to invest in appraisal of new assets. So we think that this is a very good signal of a stable and continue upstream activity that will continue to keep the potential, the upstream potential of this region up to date and continue to create potential value for the gas market in the region. At the same time, we think that it's not only a story of discovery, because in the region we have also a story of execution. So this year we have seen that Karish Tanin entered in production, and a company like Energean, so start up the first time an FPSO that has been a big milestone for them in the development, but also a big milestone for Israel in the possibility to export volume. At the same time, we had that in the same period, we have Aphrodite is going to be ready to make appraisal. We have that Tamar expansion has been approved. We have a pre-front-end engineering for the Leviathan phase 2. So I think that we can admit that on the upstream side, the East Mediterranean area is absolutely a high potential region with the continuous growth both in exploration and in production, and also with an environment in terms of geopolitical environment that is supporting, because we have not to forget that this year has been find an agreement between Lebanon and Israel on the water border, that allowed the development, the appraisal of Cana in the Lebanon. That means that however is a region where they're looking for geopolitical stability to support the growth of this region. But I would like to also put the light that is not only an area in terms of upstream, but also in terms of the demand. The Israeli demand reached 12 billion cubic meter this year. The Egyptian demand is already 65. 65 is a number to give you some sensitivity to my side is the same size of Italian market today. So it's that is the eighth economy in the world. So Egyptian reached 65, and there's a CAGR expected at the very high, and we would expect by the end of the decade we reach 80 BCM of market capacity. So I would say that this region is not only a big potential in terms of export, but has also a big potential in terms of local demand, and have an absolutely need of infrastructure and stability to develop that infrastructure to allow the development and monetization of the resources that they are continuing to discover. And when we speak about the upstream, we cannot forget that. Now, please come back to stay on this slide, please. When we speak about the upstream and our economy and our sector, everyone that is in our sector, in energy sector, knows that our industry is a capital intensive industry. Our industry is not made with OPEX, it's mainly made with CAPEX. And in the last decade, so in the last 3 years, from the start of the 20s, we see that the oil and gas industry is suffering a drop of investment. To give you some size of what's going on, oil and gas were more or less investing in the tens in the last decade, more or less 800, 900 billion dollar per year in terms of in all the oil and gas, considering both the upstream and the facility to monetize the upstream discovered. Since the early 2020, this quantity dropped by 50%. So we are now in the range of 400 billion per year. It's clear that when we consider that it's the entire business, this one is the entire oil and gas, I would like to focus on the gas part. Roland Berger published in last February a study where say that we need in the gas segment an investment of about 100 billion per year to make feasible the sustainability of the gas market worldwide. So to avoid that European and Chinese will fight for the LNG, increasing the price, that there would be country that will continue to burn coal because the gas is not affordable, or that we will consider that the gas will be not considerable sustainable because it's not secure. So to face with the trilemma in Europe, but at worldwide level, we have to invest 100 billion. That means a lot of money, and especially in an environment like this one with the super high volatility, where we see the price going up and down every day, and the flows moving east to west or north south. So over these 100 million, Roland Berg is saying that 40% is concentrated between North Africa and Middle East, so in the Mediterranean region. So it means that more or less we have an investment of 40 billion per year. 40 billion per year, if we look in terms of LNG liquefaction, means more than 50 MTPA per year. That is not the case. But in the upstream, we can consider that 40 billion is much more of what we have been seen invested in Zohr or in Leviathan together up till now. And this one should be invested every year. So it's clear that with this target, we need a stable and proactive relation between countries, and also all the stakeholders have to collaborate to make possible this investment, because the amount of the investment is so big that it's not possible to use the common approach and wait that so in having other volatility from geopolitical reason or problem between stakeholder to not support this, to make this investment possible. But let me end my presentation with the last slide. The last slide, please. It's the following one. Would like to give you some feeling, because I discussed about the potential of the local market, but I would like to give you also a flavor of what is the potential of European market in terms of attractivity versus the Mediterranean region. At least we yesterday in Piombino arrived our first new FSRU that will provide the 5 BCM of additional regas capacity. We purchased a second FSRU that will be in place by 2024 in Ravenna, and so only SNAM by itself it's increasing their gas capacity by 10 BCM. So we moved from around 15 to 25 BCM of regas capacity in 2 years. So with an investment that is above the billion. On top of that, we are investing other 2.5 billion to increase the capacity of Italy to transport gas from the south to the north, to allow the connection with the Libya, Algeria, and Azerbaijan to flow gas not only to Italy but to the entire Europe. So I would like to leave you with this simply indication. So we have a gap in Europe that is quite material. We have a Mediterranean that is creating a new regas capacity outside of what SNAMI is doing. We have that there will be other 7 BCM in between France and Greece that is coming on stream, and there are 15 BCM of regas capacity in the Mediterranean region that are struggling to find an FID soon, and it's including Albania and one of these. So and more or less all the Mediterranean, from the East Mediterranean to the west, you need more or less 3-4 days of navigation, maritime transport. So LNG will take 4 days versus 4 times more to come from Gulf of Mexico. So when we look at the potential of the Mediterranean area to feed the European need of energy, we have to consider that we are 4 times near to the market, and the cost of delivering LNG to Europe is half of what is coming from the Mediterranean, is half of what is the cost from US. So I think that to point we as a SNAM, we believe that the Mediterranean has a potential. We invested in 25%, as I told you before, in EMG, and we invested before of this crisis. It was 2021, and so we started operation in 2019 to purchase that company. So we consider that Mediterranean has a big potential, and it's a critical partner for development of a sustainable gas market in Europe. It's really important now, the timing. The essence of the problem is that to be in time to catch this opportunity. I think that if there are no questions, I finished.
Maybe we will add 1 more minute for all participants at the end of the panel after Mr. Cameron's presentation. We thank you very much, Mr. Matorozzi. We picked some high spots that 67% of the LNG, 60%, 67%. There is an increase in the LNG process of EU. We look at the summer principles of the EU on consuming lesser amount of natural gas in some daily life preventions, but it seems that in your graphic it's just 3% reduction in the total consumption instead of the target 15%.
No, this one is sorry. This one has been the reduction of the import. It's only considering import, but it's lower than what was expected. Yeah, and it's a rolling average, so it's taking 12 months. So January and February are absolutely before of the crisis, so it's not getting the entire picture, but we are far away from the 15.
Yes, thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Cameron, who is the planning of the enter-exit and other principles in his period during the British Gas Company. Mr. Cameron, I give the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction, Murat. Okay, can we put the slides up? I can get started. Thank you very much. So we've been hearing a lot about pipelines. I'm going to think about an offshore LNG development as the future. Next slide. That's energy markets and some of our clients down there. Please move on. As Murat said, I was a corporate planner and corporate strategist at British Gas many, many thousands of years ago, and have been running energy markets, international economic energy markets, economic consultancy since then. We work all over. Thank you. Okay, next slide. So the East Mediterranean, a fast-growing area. We've heard a lot about the opportunities and the developments, large gas fields, Tamar, Leviathan, Zor, Aphrodite, other ones coming up. And but this is in a region that has been historically very tense. Christians, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Jewish, and the different religious and ethnic groups. It's been a tense region for thousands of years, and then we're trying to develop gas resources in this tense region. So traditionally, countries look at their maritime jurisdictions, of which there are several overlapping maritime jurisdictions in the region. we've got countries look at their own gas resources and then look at develop a pipeline from their gas to their onshore a pipeline. So Egypt started with this, developing the Egyptian maritime jurisdiction with pipelines feeding into Damietta and Idku for their LNG liquefaction and export plants. And then Israel with Tamar feeding into mainland Israel. And then in the dotted lines here, you can see other potential pipelines that will be coming along. Zohr going into the to Egypt, Leviathan possibly to Turkey or to Cyprus, Aphrodite into Cyprus, and possibly through southern Cyprus, through Turkish Cyprus onto Turkey. So a lot of pipeline developments here in the region. And then on top of that, please move on. The next slide, the Eastmed pipeline that we've just heard something about in the previous presentation from this area, from the Leviathan field, Cyprus, Crete, Greece, and on to Italy. A big pipeline project. So we've seen it's likely to be, we would estimate in energy markets, we estimate probably going to be around $10 billion to develop this. And you have the production costs as well. So it's going to take a long time. It's a 1,300 kilometer pipeline. So it is an ambitious project, although it has been selected as a European project of common interest. So it has the European Commission support for it. But it is an ambitious project. So we've seen this development. So far, the traditional route of finding resources, arguing over your maritime jurisdiction, and then pipeline to your national borders for processing, and then transports and in distribution. Okay, but there is another way of looking at this. Thank you. A better way, I think, which is to look at this entirely offshore. Technology has moved on in recent years, and you can now have floating production and storage, FPSO, usually for oil, and a floating LNG for gas. And then LNG carriers can arrive at the FLNG and take liquefied gas direct off to markets. So you have subsea production to a floating LNG ship moored to it with tethering lines, processes, liquefies, stores gas on the ship, and then can transfer from that on ship storage to an LNG carrier and then take it off to markets. The waters in the Eastern Mediterranean are shallow enough to make this very feasible. We're looking at about 1,500 meters, and we can see that's well within the range of what other projects are doing. Also, once you have a floating LNG and LNG carriers arriving, you have a potential for an East Mediterranean LNG hub. So there has been talk about a Turkish gas hub, and I think this is entirely appropriate. Turkey was very well placed to become a gas hub, and I think in addition and complementary to that, you could have an LNG hub offshore. Now, although there are many hubs around the world, of course, Henry Hub, the main one in the United States, TTF and NBP in Northwest Europe, there are actually no LNG hubs anywhere in the world yet. We don't know if East Mediterranean could become the first one, but why not? So an LNG hub, once you've got producers producing at that point, and you've got carriers coming from different locations, they can start buying and selling at that point. So you've got many market players, buyers and sellers. They will start negotiating trades and start negotiating prices. And this is how hubs develop. And once it's entirely offshore, there's no need for pipelines to one particular country. All of the participants in the region can join in, their participation determined by their investment contribution and their shareholding in the project. So it's not so that there do not need to be these jurisdictional issues and these arguments about which country has the rights over which set of resources and then getting it back to your own country. All of those jurisdictional issues could be bypassed with an international joint venture, and with whichever of the regional players want to be involved can be. The advantages over traditional pipeline to shore: it can be built quicker. We're talking about a matter of months, and FLNG and carriers can be hired. So it's just a matter of when one becomes available. And so we're talking about a matter of months. The offshore production, of course, takes time, but and putting in a carrier, FLNG, and an LNG carrier to take it away is much, much, much quicker than pipeline development, which can take years. All of these pipelines that we looked at and these Eastmed will take many, many years to come to develop, but an LNG option with it entirely floating can be much, much quicker. Also cheaper. We will look at some international case studies now, but I mentioned perhaps $10 billion for the Eastmed plus the development costs, but we can see that for $5 billion you can, in total, you can build something similar in other parts of the world. The cost will be much less. The potential for an Eastmed LNG hub, and it can be a route to peaceful cooperation. Okay, this is not a one-off. I mean, it's not just an idea off the top of my head. It's this has been done elsewhere. If we move on, we could look at some other examples. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick schematic of what it looks like. You have the undersea development, the production, risers carrying it to your FLNG, which is moored to the seabed, and then liquefaction, storage on that FLNG and transfer to an LNG carrier. Next slide, please. And you can see this in action. There's an example, the FLNG ship there, and the LNG carrier next to it with gas LNG being transferred. This particular one is Coral FLNG offshore Mozambique. We will have a look at that now as an example, a couple of examples. Please, next slide. And next one. Thank you. First of all, Senegal and Mauritania. So BP have been developing this area, and the main developer with Cosmos from the United States. Greater Tortue Armayim GTA. It's a joint venture between Senegal and Mauritania. So the basin crosses the jurisdiction of both countries. They have agreed a joint venture approach to this with the international companies developing it, BP, as I said, and Cosmos. So train 1, capacity of 2.3 million tons, which is about 3.3 billion cubic meters a year. And this is expandable to up to 10 million tons a year. Expected start date is soon, end of 2023. So you've got a water depth of just under 3,000 meters, 2,850 meters for drilling, and 120 meters for the liquefaction and FPSO. Total estimated cost for the whole thing is $4.6 billion. So you get change out of $5 billion for this. BP also see this as the potential for becoming a West African LNG hub. Again, you've got many producers from different areas that would feed into this this plant, and then you've got buyers taking their carriers off to different directions. A hub could develop. Okay, move on. Next slide. That's Senegal, Mauritania. I've just described this. Okay, move on, please. Thank you. And then Mozambique, Coral Sur. That was the ship we saw a couple of moments ago. And here we have there's another one, liquefaction vessel there. So 3.4 million tons a year, the first phase, which is just under 5 billion cubic meters a year. It's already operational. Cargoes have already started operating from this from around October, was it, or November last year. Eni and ExxonMobil developing this. Total development cost $7 billion, and it's at a depth of 2,000 meters. Thank you. So you've got two good examples there. Other examples, we could mention Prelude in Australia, and also it is actually being considered for the Eastmed. The Eastmed Leviathan, that is Chevron and NewMed Energy from Israel, are currently carrying out some studies into an FLNG at Leviathan field. So, and this would be for 4.6 MTA production, and maybe exports to Germany. So this is the route. I think it's far better than it's a very viable alternative to the lengthy and expensive pipeline options. Do the whole thing entirely offshore. Next slide, please. And the obvious market is Europe. So there's a sort of before and after. There's before COVID started, and then there's before and after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The energy world, as we all know, has changed completely in that time. If we cast our mind back just 3 years, March 2019, hub prices at TTF were around 15 euros per megawatt hour. That's $4.4 per MMBTU. Next slide. And if you notice, the TTF prices were lower than Southeast Europe. So Southeast Europe prices are generally higher than Northwest Europe. So that's spring 2019. And then at the high point last year, 29th of August, 320 euros per megawatt hour, or $93 per MMBTU. That's over 20 times more. Prices have come down considerably since then. So March 2023, yesterday or the other day, is 43 euros per megawatt hour, $13 per MMBTU. Although prices have come down a lot, they're still more than 3 times what they were before March 3 years ago. So I think the obvious market for LNG is to Europe, whether Southeast Europe, Turkey, Greece, Italy, or to markets in Northwest Europe. Okay, so that's my conclusions, that offshore development, floating LNG carriers, LNG carriers direct to markets, and Europe is an obvious market for this. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much, Mr. Cameron. It's a brief information on the costs and markets analysis to develop LNG in the very close future. And also the prices are very volatile, as we saw. And still the price is higher than the normal price of it. We see that if the infrastructures, if the new natural gas discoveries will be loosening this the problem, the stress on the prices and the affordability. I thank you very much for your contribution. Before closing the session, I just want to give 1 minute for your comments, starting from Mr. Cheluzzi, for giving some more ideas on the issue. Mr. Cheluzzi, yes.
Yes, thank you. After this very interesting discussion, I think that is confirmed the priorities for the short-term objective for overcome the energy crisis. Then there is complementarity, absolute complementarity between renewable energy sources and gas availability. The second one has been for me very interesting, the information about the LNG role in the next years for the gas market, because flexibility is essential for the energy market and for the security of the energy sector. Then diversification of the chain of supply and flexibility, and LNG has these skills, and as I heard, that's the cost of domestic LNG, domestic in the Mediterranean system, and the import of LNG from USA and other exporters is very competitive, even if the crisis has not ended. We don't know how much long will be. Then we have to continue in our efforts for reinforcement of the security and the affordability of the energy market. And LNG and renewable energy sources is the mix for the Mediterranean next time, even because the pipelines, we have a not very good experience with pipelines because it's not flexible. Then we have to prefer in this moment to diversify the chain of supply.
Maybe the power generation, as Mr. Matarazzo mentioned, the Egyptian has a significant increase in the consumption of natural gas in the domestic use. So the power generation, maybe for the domestic use of Egypt is increasing. But on the other hand, the air mobility is in our concept. The electrical cars may increase the demand on the both EU and the other East Mediterranean countries. So for the upcoming years, as Mr. Matarazzo mentioned, there are a huge amount of investments required to maintain the ongoing supply chain. So, Mr. Matarazzo, I give the last minute comment of yours for the discussion.
I think that being a company that is owning 1,000 kilometers of pipeline, I would disagree with Mr. Celozzi on the fact that we are not find well with the pipeline. I think that what is important is that we renounce to dogma. There is not a future of LNG, of pipeline, or we cannot believe in a dogmatic approach to energy. Energy is a business where money and technology are driving the future. So we cannot decide if it's FLNG or of a pipeline the solution to deliver Europe secure supply, but we have to believe that all the solutions have to pursue and in proper time to get that. So I think that if something have been learned in 2022 is that the dogmatic approach cannot be in our mind a lot, because the dogma sooner or later will change.
So it's
I
also
have just
Mr. Clemens, yes.
only to clarify. I have a system approach, not a dogmatic approach, and I don't like that is a good idea to connect a well to an hub and region. We have to integrate the energy systems and then to have the most flexible and integration, and not depending on the only one point of production. Then is the system that supply the system approach that suggests an option and another one. But anyway, it's interesting that there are no aligned, not always aligned point of view. Thank you.
So the volatility of the energy prices, as we have observed, is depending on the security of supply, and the consumption is matching, but we need to have a flexible option as well, especially for the Eastern Mediterranean resources. Maybe the floating LNG can be a good startup business, can easily start in a short and cheaper way. But in the long run, we should have a trustable infrastructure such as a pipeline. So what do you think on the issue, Mr. Cameron? What's
yes.
Is there a balance? Do you think is there a balance in between the LNG and the pipeline?
Of course, yes, I agree with you, and I agree with Mr. Matarazzo that we are not taking a dogmatic approach. In fact, the idea of an offshore development is completely to avoid a dogmatic approach. That we are in a tense region. We're thinking how to develop the East Mediterranean for all the different 8 or so countries around the region and other interested parties. How to do this in a way that benefits all of them without reducing tensions, not increasing them. So an offshore development where the gas is not dedicated for one particular country, so that all the different regional countries can participate depending on their own desire to become a shareholder. And it would not be the only option. We do have some pipelines, and other ones will happen. And if it's for close to markets, of course, a pipeline is the best route. And Europe is very keen to increase diversity of supply. There is, of course, a combined route. You have pipeline, LNG, and various renewable resources as well. But I think that an offshore development is a route for regional cooperation. The other point is prices. What has happened to gas price? What will happen? Of course, gas prices are well known to be very volatile. When we had such leaps up and such a big fall again, what will happen next? My own view is that there's been significant underinvestment in oil and gas for many years, and I think that prices, the tensions with Russia, however that war resolves, the tensions will be around for a long time. And my guess is that that European gas prices will remain high. They may not go back up to 300 euros per megawatt hour. Maybe they will, but probably not. But I think they're going to stay well above pre-COVID levels. So these are good markets, and the costs of LNG are coming down all the time. So LNG is increasingly competitive to take advantage of those prices.
Okay, I thank you very much for the participation and your valuable experiences sharing with us. In our Black Sea approach, there is another issue, especially the Ukraine and Russia. But in this Mediterranean issue, we are just on the way to establish a good implementable market at the moment. So the hopes are raising in the Mediterranean nowadays, and hopefully we will see both LNG and other pipeline infrastructure investments. One is short term, the other one is long term, but together with a diversification and market establishment will happen in the upcoming years, we hope. We all thank you for participation, and I also want to mention once more that the biggest earthquake, one of the biggest earthquake in our region, has happened in a few weeks ago, and the geosciences, which is very related with the energy, demonstrated us that the region will probably leave a similar earthquake more, both in the Cyprus and the Lebanon-Israel side. So I want to reiterate once more that the nature is very dangerous if we don't take measures to avoid some kind of problems. I thank you very much for the participation. See you in our next meetings. Thank
Can
you.
I just add our thoughts and our best wishes and our commiserations with all of the victims and those suffering from the earthquakes. And we will continue to be available to help all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kemal. Okay, I am finalizing the panel. Once more, we thank the Mr. President Ersin Tatar of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and also the Ankara Social Sciences University Rector, and the Ambassador as well. See you in the next panel.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. See you soon. Bye.